Now, let me start by showing you this. In fact,
it's Mafalda.
Yes, it's Mafalda. And in fact, is there with this sort of torn world. And with the emotional speeches we had today, I feel free to share my own emotions. First of all, let me say that this title does not imply that I'm going to explain how to preserve sanity or that. That is the question I have been putting to myself for a long time, because in fact, I really wonder how to preserve sanity and hope in the midst of this chaotic semantic environment where we are living, especially so. And for many years in Argentina, there's been an crescendo situation here. In fact, about 20 years ago, somebody I met through General Semantics, who was Stuart Jordan, an astrophysicist from NASA, and invited me to give a talk before a small group of people in Washington who were humanists, and also most of them former NASA scientists. And they wanted to know what happened here, why recurrently we would go through these awful crises. Now, I decided then to speak about what I knew best, and that was the cultural reasons I attributed to these crises, not political or economic reasons. And then I said that in fact, Argentina seemed to be the perfect anti-general semantics example in action. Because of my general semantic training, I could very easily detect all those untrue statements presented as true statements. Well, I had written something here, of course, about which most of you spoke about yesterday and today. But for example, the way we can see today on our television screens our present president saying, for example, I believe in A, and the screen is split in two parts. So in one part, you see him today saying, I believe in A. And on the other part of the screen, you see him saying exactly the opposite, I believe in non-A. And that is dated. That could have been yesterday, a month ago, or a year ago. Now, this double bind message thus produced and received, can you imagine the dramatic effects it has, as Bateson said years ago, on us, on people, on citizens, no matter what the ideological conditions or feelings or beliefs can be. But psychologically, I mean, what is our semantic reaction? So as Bateson so well put it, and he made experiments with that and even with animals. When you are confronted to a double bind of this type, either you get paralyzed, there's anomia, you're very confused, perplexed, you don't know what to do. And in the worst cases, there's schizophrenia, according to him. Now, this has been in crescendo. Now, I explained in those days some of the reasons why I thought these crises were systematically coming back. But in these days, I feel there's something else. What I feel now is that these things, these attitudes, these splitting maps from territories has become a national sport. Misinformation, disinformation. Very few people, I think, can distinguish facts from inferences from judgment. So I feel today that there is also a systematic and it's voluntary now. What I feel is that there's some kind of a war that has been stalled and launched, which does not imply cannons or bombs, but which implies, and this is my field, language, cultural values. And then by chance, I happened to read some of the objectives of the Forum of Sao Paulo, the FSP, the Sao Paulo Forum, which is an organization that was set up in the 90s of radical leaders in Latin America who openly, overtly speak about their objectives. And their objectives, according to them, according to what I've read, their objectives are just to destroy all our values systematically, destroy our culture and our language. And now when I feel, I know, because the government, for example, is now trying to, by decrees or whatever, to change our grammatical rules, some of them. Language, I'm a linguist, you're all semanticists. We all know that language changes all the time, but changes are produced by us, by people themselves, by people ourselves. It's not imposed, from top to the bottom. And now when they try to include new grammatical categories, for example, to give you an example for those who speak Spanish, now the central bank, for example, in the midst of this crisis and pandemia and economic disaster, they set out a regulation saying that, it is accepted to say todos, todas, y todes. Now, what's the point of this? It's absolutely nuts. And I'm so glad to have heard Sandy, a psychiatrist. I have talked to some Argentine psychiatrists, and for some years now, I wondered how the Argentine Psychiatrists Association did not make some type of statement about all this. So the final question is, the pandemic broke out in Argentina in 2020, only 3 months after the new president had taken office, with a 7 months lockdown, the longest one in the world. We're still in a lockdown, with no successful results from the health point and sanitary point of view, plus the economic uncertainty. Well, most Argentinians are fearful and very much concerned, but much more of our leaders' irrational behaviors than of the COVID virus itself. So this is clear for most of us, I think. Now, what can we do? Do general semantics tools help? Of course they do. They have helped me, and I'm thankful for them. Are they enough to preserve sanity and hope? The question is, flexibility characterizes the scientific attitude, and science can be regarded as a method of adjustment. But when the environment, organism as a whole in an environment, when the environment seems to have abandoned reason and common sense, how appropriate can it be to adapt itself to it? What's the relationship here between my own being and the environment? How can we preserve our own sanity against the degrading currents pushing society as a whole downwards and backwards? Okay. And to keep the willingness to go on and the trust in ourselves and on others and on the future, I think we need something else. And that is confidence, faith. This is a slippery territory, I know. But the long religious traditions and practices of the 3 religions of the book, beyond the dogmas and rituals, Buddhism, Oriental practices, foster meditation, foster silence. And I remember those wonderful general semantics seminars, and I took many of them, and I'd love to take one again, in which we had, apart from the science classes and the general semantic classes, we had those fantastic, to me, silent walks and silent luncheons and silence. So I think we should open up a space of silence, of cosmic connection, of inward and inner concentration. And I think that that, plus general semantic tools, can help us go through this crisis and get to that better world and land and earth that we are all striving for. Thank you.